very good Michigan team. I actually have Michigan favored in their first 11 games this year. I've got them going 11-0 when they travel to face Ohio State on the road on November 26th.
Yeah. All right, welcome in. Yeah, we're ready to go here on this Tuesday, August the 2nd. Hope everybody is having a good Tuesday. Going to be a real hot one tomorrow. We're here talking Michigan football, basketball here on Michigan Today, live weekdays at 1 o'clock. Also taking your calls, throwing your messages up on the screen. We're talking about what is going on, the latest in Michigan. And today I broke out some predictions. I got a 12-pack that has been cooling and is ready to be cracked open right now. A 12-pack of Michigan football predictions as it sits for today. I think all of these predictions, I mean, there's some things that could happen that I could change. Obviously, if somebody got a little dinged up before the start of the season, I don't even like talking about such things before, being on the eve of training camp and everything. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it with my 12-pack of predictions. I'll throw your predictions up if you message in. I might not read all of the predictions, but, keep them coming in, and, we'll see where you're at with the predictions. Let's start out with prediction number 1. Makes sense to me. Prediction number 1, the Michigan offense will average more than 40 points per game this year. Now, last year, they averaged 35.8 points, just over 34 points if you just go with the Big Ten games. So they've got some room to improve. Ohio State was number 1 in the nation last year. They averaged 45 points. But the Michigan offense will average more than 40 points per game. That is my first prediction of the year. Let's get to prediction number 2. J.J. McCarthy will start his first game at Iowa on October 1st, 2022. Now, you could say that this is a controversial prediction. You could say you don't know anything of what you're talking about, and I think some of that, I've thought about it, and, this is where I arrived. I did make a prediction. Now, if you're out there and somebody doesn't like to make predictions, you're just like, I just want to let the season happen. I hope Michigan wins every game. I don't care who starts. I don't care who catches the touchdowns. It's fair. It's completely fair. And you think, by doing this, you're fanning the flames of controversy that could be a distraction for the Michigan football team. I don't know how fair that is. I mean, look at if the guys are getting ready on the eve of training camp, worried about somebody making a prediction about when somebody started. I'm not buying that part. So, it's what we do. We make predictions. This is how I think it is going to play out. I think that Cade McNamara is going to start the season, but I think over those first 4 games that JJ will be able to do enough to change the mind of Jim Harbaugh to have number 9 under center to start that Iowa game. That is prediction number 2. Let's get to prediction number 3. And that gets us to Blake Corum, Michigan running back. Blake Corum rushes for more than 1,000 yards. Now, I think this is an easy one. Corum last year, and remember, he missed some time. He rushed for 952 yards. So rushing for 1,000 yards, you want to call that a floor? I think he's going to do it. But, getting $1,000 It used to be something in the NFL that was, but I think that's when they just played 14 games. If you got to 1,000 yards in the NFL, you'd say, hey, he's a 1,000-yard rusher. Well, then they went to 16 games, and it wasn't such a big deal. Now they go to 17 games. It's not that big of a deal if you're a 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL. But we're not talking about the NFL. We're talking about Michigan, and we're talking about 12 games, 13 if you get to the Big Ten title, get 14 if you get to the college, well, 15 if you make it all the way to the championship game. Heck, he gets to 15 games, he could get over 1,500 yards. But for these purposes here, I am going with the 12 games. I think that Blake Corum will go over $1,000 in one. He'll go for 1,000 yards in 12 games. Prediction number 3. That gets us to prediction number 4. It gets us to Donovan Edwards. We talked a lot about Donovan Edwards on yesterday's show and just what, he was part of, if you remember. Do I still have it? Yeah, he was part of the hype train that everybody's all aboard. All aboard, hype train. And Donovan Edwards will lead the Big Ten in running backs in receiving yards. Now, you might think this one is obvious, and you know what? I'm not going to really disagree with you there. I think this is obvious. I think that Donovan Edwards, we saw his superpower is catching the ball out of the backfield. If you wanted to call, like, Donovan Edwards might be the reverse Deebo Samuel. He might be this physical, tremendous wide receiver. Masquerading sounds like, it's a negative. This tremendous all Big Ten type wide receiver that lines up in the backfield. But he's a running back. He played running back, and he's a quarterback too. He can throw the ball. He is a slash, but in reverse. And how many players can we think of that played running back, but you thought that they might be a better wide receiver than they were running back? And it might be, like you put Donovan Edwards, maybe he would just be an average or above average wide receiver if he played, in the slot. But you put a guy in the backfield and he's adept at leaking out and being able to catch the ball in the backfield and then get going because he has that certain amount of space there. I don't know. The reverse Deebo Samuel, but I think Donovan Edwards will lead the Big Ten running backs in receiving yards. The punters says he thinks Harbaugh will start JJ in one of the first 3 games. JJ starting the Iowa game would be a clear indicator that JJ is the starter going forward. I agree with you on what you're saying there, and you might be right. Like, there's a lot of different ways that Michigan can go after the quarterback competition, and as we continue to talk about, you have these 3 non-conference games that we all know that are extremely manageable. Michigan knows they're manageable. They can't really say anything. They can't say, yeah, we got a bunch of easy games here, so we can do whatever we want. But they can do whatever they want. So whatever Harbaugh and Weiss, quarterback coach, and, guy's going to be calling the plays, Sharon Moore involved, all of it over there when they team up talking about how are we going to divvy up these snaps. And if you really want to see JJ, like, you could give McNamara the first quarter in the first game and McCarthy the entire second quarter in the first game. And then whoever you think plays the best in those, the quarters, that's the Lloyd Carr. That was the Drew Henson, Tom Brady model. Brady's going to start and Henson's going to play in the second quarter. And then at halftime, Lloyd's going to tap one of them on the shoulder and say, get on out there. And 2 times in 1999, Drew Henson got the tap on his shoulder at Syracuse, which Michigan won, I believe, 18-13. And then against Michigan State, which I think ended up being a 35-34 loss. But I recall being at that game thinking that it didn't matter who played quarterback in the second half for Michigan, that it was the defensive line for Michigan State which ruled the day. But Tom Brady did get in late in that game, started throwing the ball all over the place. It got Michigan within one. And then now, knowing what we know about Tom Brady, I would say that you can easily make the case that I could have been wrong about my assessment that particular day. But that's how I felt way back in '99. But so you could go with that model. You could go with the punters model, which says, go into the first game and, play it by ear. That doesn't sound like a very good plan. We'll just, just play it by ear. No, having a plan in the first game, and thinking about one of those three saying, we're going to let JJ go through all the stuff. That's a good idea to me. I wouldn't be against that, punters. If Harbaugh was asking me, if he called me up and said, look, we've got a lot of different ideas on how to approach the non-conference slate with these quarterbacks, what's your idea? And then I would tell him, get JJ, make sure you're getting JJ in where he's in with the first team. And I like the car model, first game, first quarter, then second quarter goes to McCarthy. But then if Harbaugh came back and said, what do you think of my friend, the punters model or idea, where we're going to go with selected series in the first game, but McNamara's going to start game one, but we're going to start JJ either of the night game against Hawaii or the third game against UConn. And maybe you want to do it against UConn, and maybe you don't want to put McCarthy with his first start as a night game just because you want to keep things. But maybe you do. I don't know those factors that go into. But I would say I'm not against that idea, Jim. I think the punters is onto something. Donovan Edwards, the punter's making a joke that he will also lead Michigan in passing yards. Maybe a pass per attempt, which he led in last year. Yards per attempt, pass per attempt, Donovan Edwards. If I gave you today, punters, the over and under of 1.5 passes thrown by Donovan Edwards this year, where would you put your money? Because he's going to throw at least once. I'll go over. I'll say twice. Because I want to, in the non-conference, show the rest of the Big Ten that they better be staying with the receivers and not hanging out close to the line of scrimmage, to try to cheat up on the run. They better play the pass. And then late in the year, when you are having some success running the ball, and they start walking up those safeties, they start pressing those corners a little bit more, and they're not falling for the fakes. Well, that's when you unleash Edwards. So I'll go over on the 1.5 on Donovan Edwards pass attempts this year. Jason says if JJ isn't the starter by week 3 or 4, I will question a lot capitalized. Starting with the coaching staff, also capitalized. And ending with the high school ranking system, Cade is good, yet JJ could be great. Yeah, well, let's just work in reverse there. The one thing about the high school ranking systems, like these are just guides. There have been plenty of instances where you get quarterbacks that, aren't 5 stars, aren't even 4 stars, that have come in and are just fine. But I get what you're saying there. I mean, you just can't get too roped in. I tell everybody this, and then I get as roped in as everyone else. Don't get roped into the recruiting rankings. And then here's me getting roped up into the recruiting rankings. So don't do that. I can say it, but even if I don't follow it, but let's not get too, dialed in on the star system. The coaching staff, I get it. I think that, I don't know about the starter. Look, if we watch these first 3 games and McCarthy is out there making play after play, and if we're watching it and you can really say honestly, I don't know, Jason, if you can honestly say it, if you're thinking that, oh, he's a 5-star, so everything that he does, you're putting into this bucket of, oh, he's just incredible. And then Cade, makes a throw. It's like, Cade, he can't make the place at Jay. I mean, every time. Can you, as a fan, Jason, and can I watch the competition through the first 3 games and evaluate it fairly? That's a question I have for everybody. I don't know. As many times as I hear people, and I'm not, look, I'm acting like I'm been able to remove myself of, completely no bias. And, I'm some scientist, that operates in just the facts. Or some like journalist that, takes the, the oath of not cheering for anyone like, you have to do if you go into journalism. But I've watched too many games with too many Michigan fans, and we'll say, well, let's be objective about the call, and then you'll see a call, and all 10 people, that's the worst call I've ever seen. That's like really, and you'll watch the replay and everything, and I'm like, I kind of see the other side here. No, the other 10 people in the room are all like, Michigan's getting hosed here. It always happens. And I think that is just part being a fan. Who really wants to detach themselves and look at something objectively? I'm just talking specifically about referee calls right now. You don't. You just get into it and you think every call is going against you. And the refs are in the bag. They're Ohio State fans. I mean, people really do believe that. You get caught up into the emotion. But that's the thing. It's an emotional game and you're a fan. I mean, who's sitting down let's just flatline this thing and just watch the game, take a little sip of lemon water and let's just evaluate. No, that's what we do. It's a very emotional game. Let's crank a couple more predictions out here. We've got 12 of them, but first let's go to Tyler, who says, where's your ideal spot to watch? You take notes or enjoy some cocktails with friends? Well, that's a really good question, Tyler, and I'll give you the last almost 30 years of me watching Michigan football. I remember my first press pass. I started working when I was 24 years old. It was the Pigskin Classic, Michigan against Virginia, and I'm going up into the press box to work the game, cover Michigan. This is a dream come true. This is awesome. You go up into the press box, and it's quiet. And the first thing that you're like, wait, nobody's cheering in here for anything that's going on, and nobody's drinking. So I was used to tailgating and, and screaming. It's different when you get up into the press box. This gets very sanitized, sitting down, watching a game. But after years of doing that, and for 11 years, I was in the press box and, not jumping up and down and not, just drinking tea or coffee or whatever. And taking notes. And afterwards, I would do some tailgating. But for those first 11 years, one year I sat next to Jerry Hanlon. One year I sat next to former Wolverine J.J. Grant, who was a linebacker. I sat next to Michael Taylor, a quarterback. Quarterback's super smart, know everything that's going on there. I sat next to Jared Irons one year, Rod Payne, Jamie Morris, Clint Copenhaver, sitting by those guys that played the game and not saying a whole lot. I just sit there and I just listen to them, whatever they have to say. And I'm like, wow, I'm trying to learn a little bit about football. But, after I was done in Ann Arbor, I went to Detroit. Well, then a lot of times I was working during the games or on after the game. So then you are still taking notes. But then you get to the speed all the way forward until the pandemic. Where or there would be some night games when I was working in Detroit. I like, I like being with my friends. I like being at a bar for most games. When it comes down to Michigan, I just like being at home watching the game. Because I am going to record the game and I am going to watch it later, but I just like to watch it in real time and, not reverse the plays or anything, just let it play out. And so, 55-inch high def, sitting down, and I'm going to watch the game. Now, when it comes down with cocktails and friends, it's really exciting. But my problem when if I'm having cocktails and friends, my friends are not as dialed in and watching the game. And then, here I am too. And once you have over 2 or 3 drinks, you don't really retain actually of what you're watching. And then you got everybody in your ear talking. So that's why the perfect spot, Tyler, is I like going to the games, but if I'm not going to be at the game, I like watching the game at home. Punters is in on the over. One more, and then we get to some more predictions. Blue Good to see Blue Dove on the feedback. He says he is biased. JJ starts game 1. Hopefully, but if not, the Hawaii game would be great. And then JJ QB1 the rest of the year. Could happen. And if I take the temperature of Michigan football fans, I don't know, could we get 1 million? Could we get, if we get 1,000 Michigan fans? That's the only qualification, is that you have to be a Michigan fan. You have to be interested in Michigan winning, not a Spartan in Wolves clothing who's just going to say something. Real Michigan fans. My feel for real Michigan fans is that 60% of Michigan fans would vote for J.J. McCarthy being the starter for the majority of the games. That's what I think. That's not overwhelming, but it is a majority. And there are plenty of people who are in McNamara's corner. I get that. But remember the factors when it comes down to quarterbacks. And this isn't to say anything negative about anybody. But one, when you're the backup quarterback, that instantly makes you a very popular guy. Very popular. J.J. McCarthy has never started a game. He is totally a backup. That makes him very popular immediately. Recruiting rankings. J.J. McCarthy was more highly thought of as a high school player than Cade McNamara. Those two things are a lot of things that you have going for you in terms of popularity. And then I would put the third thing is wow appeal. You know, Cade dropping back, delivering the football in where it needs to go, and getting points down the field, all valuable. Guy won the Big Ten. It's awesome. But wow factor immediately with McCarthy in game 1 is avoiding the rush, sprinting all the way out to the right, having 2 people come at you, whipping the ball across the field, across your body. 5 years ago, nobody would ever even attempt to pass like that. Here's McCarthy doing in his first ever game across the field on his back foot, connecting perfectly with Dalen Baldwin, who took it into the end zone for a 69-yard touchdown. Wow. I mean, that is a wow factor. And then we could probably go over another 10 plays where McCarthy was running around at times maybe with a chicken with his head cut off and then delivers this, awesome strike. And none was more of a wow factor than in the Orange Bowl. Like, I don't even remember most of the Orange Bowl now, but there was a play where all was sitting right in the middle of the field. There were like 5 guys converging on him, and McCarthy just whips the ball 20 yards right in there. Perfect. In between all these, like, I don't even know. I think Aaron Rodgers would have been watching the Orange Bowl and would have said, ooh, that's a real nice throw. That's a wow throw. I don't know how many guys, even in the pros, can make that throw. Rodgers, Mahomes, couple more, Stafford. It was an NFL throw. It was a wow throw. So, yeah, I think most people are with the wow factor of McCarthy. Let's get to, that was prediction 4. Let's get to prediction 5. Roman Wilson, pictured, will lead Michigan in touchdown receptions with 7. If you go back and look at the receptions by Michigan football players last year, no U of M wide receiver, no U of M player caught more than 3 TDs last year. Talk about spreading it out. Cornelius Johnson, right down the list here. You had guys, a lot of guys with 3, but nobody caught more than 3. So you can go through and say, hey, who's going to lead Michigan in touchdown receptions? And you say Roman Wilson, you say, what? You know Ronnie Bell's coming back. You know they have Eric All. You know that Andrell Anthony is going to be playing from game 1. You know they're going to – I know all those things. I'm picking Roman Wilson. And specifically, I'm going with a bullseye selection of Roman Wilson getting 7 touchdown receptions to lead Michigan in 2022. That's a hype train. All right, prediction number 5. And it involves A.J. Henning. We talked about him just a little while ago. Henning will have more rushing attempts than receptions this year. Now, at first you might say, oh, that's kind of a bold prediction. And then you look at the stats from last year and you notice that Henning had 9 rushes and 10 receptions. So, and then speaking of first game last year, Henning had a 74-yard touchdown end around. We have talked of, not just us, it is everybody talks about it, that a Deebo Samuel role for A.J. Henning. A.J. Henning will have more rushing attempts than pass receptions. And here's the thing about Michigan. Donovan Edwards, I think, is going to have more receptions than he is rushing attempts. And then Henning, who's a wide receiver, is going to have more running. So here we are. Confusing, hopefully for the defense, if you're a Michigan fan. Antoine's making a prediction. He's predicting that Ohio State's defense will still be easy to run on. Knowles, the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator that the Buckeyes brought in from last year, his D is designed to stop a passing offense. Not sure they can deal with a Big Ten style running that he's used to playing those passing teams in the Big 12. Antoine, that's not a bad prediction. I don't mind it. Antoine making another prediction. In practice, he's sure Ohio State doesn't run the ball, so they're probably not practicing against the run. In fact, I heard him say that they don't practice tackling much, which was surprising. You know what, Antoine? You start talking to, the next 2 days, I'm talking to former Michigan football players. One on offense, one on defense. Jim Scarcelli on Thursday. Tomorrow, a former Michigan quarterback will join us at 1 o'clock. They don't practice like they used to. And when I say used to, 5 years ago, you bring somebody in that played 5 years ago and say, hey, how did you practice? They don't practice tackling very much. They do some thud tackling. I was surprised that they tackled even in the spring game. Now, you get somebody like Ohio State that, they have been labeled soft, finesse, and there's some truth to that. And so, they're talking about being tough. How do you get tough? Well, you got to hit. And if they're not hitting down in Columbus in 2 days, they're just walking through, playing two-hand touch. Well, then, that's going to be good news for, Notre Dame. Because Notre Dame is going to come in there looking to punch them in the mouth. Yeah, I'm not buying that. I think Ohio State's going to have some physical practices. They don't have an easy first opponent. They've got to be playing their best football right out of the gate, so they have to hit. So I actually didn't read that. I'll take your word for it, Antoine, but they can't afford to go in tiptoeing into that first game. A prediction from the punters: Michigan will have more sacks than last year. That's that would be an encouraging, of course, prediction for this year's team. We'll get to some defensive predictions coming up here in the back half of this prediction segment. Jason is predicting he doesn't believe AJ will have more rushing attempts in the receiving. He does believe they will get his hands more involved this year. He told us on TikTok, LMAO. Well, I'm not going to laugh because I follow AJ Henning on TikTok. And I'll admit it here. I never sent AJ Henning a direct message on TikTok, but I follow a couple Wolverines on TikTok. And the one time when I was scrolling through, Roman Wilson was on TikTok, and the talk was Roman sitting there saying, "Ask me anything." And so I was like, "Oh, Roman Wilson, Michigan football player, ask me anything." I said, "Who?" This is my question to Roman Wilson this is a couple months ago. And, full disclosure, if you work in the media, which I, technically am here, you're supposed to clear everything through the media relations department, but I went against that. I set Roman Wilson the question he was asking, and I said, who's going to be that Michigan player that takes the big step forward that everybody should watch out for? It was something like that. I'm ready for him to say, Darius Clemens or something. And Roman Wilson answered me back. He said, the player that Michigan fans should look for to step it up and be better and have that great year was Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson predicted Roman Wilson to be the breakout player. And I said, what a great response. he's going with himself, predicting himself. And I thought that was a good prediction from Roman Wilson. And it played into me picking Roman Wilson to get the most touchdown receptions this year. He's confident in his own abilities. I like it. Tyler is predicting 50 points on Michigan State this year. I think it can be done. That pass defense, a ticked off Michigan team, a coach who was pounding the table in Indianapolis saying that, his goal was to throw 100 points up on me. He didn't say that, but he talked about beating him. So there it is. Let's get to, so there's prediction 6. Prediction 7. Nikhai Hill-Green will lead Michigan in tackles. NHG, he had 50 tackles last year. The returning leading tackler is not NHG. Give yourself a pat on the back at home or wherever you're watching or listening to the pod if you knew that it was Junior Colson, the true freshman last year, who is the leading returning tackler for Michigan. But I think Nikhai Hill-Green, if you just always go with the favorites, you could say, hey, why don't you just pick all the favorites? So you do try to go with some things that you feel, you hear, you got, whatever. Junior Colson would be a fine selection, and he may lead Michigan in tackles this year. But I think the guy right next to him is the selection, and he doesn't get talked about enough. Nikhai Hill-Green, prediction number 7. He will lead Michigan. Takes us to prediction 8. Mike Morris will lead Michigan in quarterback sacks. Mike Morris had a half of a sack last year. Taylor Upshaw is the leading returning quarterback sacker for Michigan, and I believe he had 1.5, 2.5. Not many. Hutchinson and Ajabo, you probably have heard this, combined for 25 sacks last year. 11 by David Ajabo. You look at the tackles for loss and the quarterback sacks that Hutchinson and Ajabo generated. These guys were amazing. We know that they were amazing. Michigan, maybe it'll be a team effort. Maybe it'll be a group effort from Upshaw to Morris to Newberg to McGregor to Harrell to TJ Guy to Keyshawn Bennett to Derek. Maybe all of those guys will pitch in and they will do, as Jason indicated, even have more sacks than last year. But I'm one player. I'm going to Mike Morris that will lead Michigan in quarterback sacks. Mark it down. Prediction 9. Jaylen Harrell, number 32, pictured, will lead Michigan in tackles for loss. TFLs. I mentioned Ajabo and Hutchinson had a ton of TFLs. Those are the two players that led Michigan last year. Taylor Upshaw, the returning starters, along with Mozzie Smith, 3.5 TFLs for Upshaw, 2.5 for Mozzie. Jaylen Harrell will lead Michigan in tackles for loss. Prediction number 9. Prediction 10. Rod Moore leads Michigan in INTs. DJ Turner led Michigan, or is the returning leader with 2 picks. DJ Turner would be a fine selection if you wanted to go. And DJ Turner could be. My idea is here that I think teams are going to this is what happens. Sometimes they, go right at the best corner. Let's go. We got strength on strength, whatever it is. But there's also a lot of teams will go, all right, well, let's go away from the strength and go somewhere else. And I think that's where Moore comes in, shading to that side, comes in with some playmaking ability and leads Michigan in interceptions from the safety position. Rod Moore, prediction number 10. All right. Let's go to prediction number 11. This gets us to Will Johnson will be a freshman All-American. Now, it's a nice prediction by me, if I do say so myself. Freshman All-American sounds good. A freshman All-American. Somebody mentioned recruiting rankings earlier. I just want to pull up these recruiting rankings this is from the Rivals 250, top 250 from last year. If you remember the player, I think he's going to end up playing corner, Travis Hunter, ended up going to play for Dion at Jackson State. The number one player in the country. Number two, remember, Michigan was in on Walter Nolan, but in the end, Texas A&M won out for Nolan's services. He's the second highest ranked player from last year. Go down a little bit farther. Dabo Sweeney got the best and highest rated quarterback out of Austin, Texas. A kid named Cade Klubnik. We'll mark down that name. And then number 4, a wide receiver out of East St. Louis. He's going to Missouri. Missouri gets a good one. And Luther Burden kind of stays home there. At least stays in East St. Louis, Illinois. I was going to say St. Louis, Missouri. So maybe he's not staying home. Close. They're on the border, and maybe that's what it comes down to. Number 5. Took 21 spots and jumped all the way up to the 5th best player in the country from last year, according to Rivals, is none other than Will Johnson, the cornerback from Grosse Pointe South out of Detroit, listed 6'2", 182, 6'3", 190 in the Michigan Spring Note. So he has shot up the board. He has grown since his commitment. And when you think about him being a freshman All-American, as a true freshman, Travis Hunter's not going to be in the mix. I mean, nobody's watching Jackson State. Walter Nolan, tough. Maybe he can play as a defensive tackle. Same thing like playing as a true freshman quarterback, but, they got DJ Uwe unless he, really tanks out, really. Luther Burden, there you go, wide receiver, playing for Missouri. How many ball games is Burden? Will Johnson might be the freshman of the year in college football. And in the Big Ten, when you start thinking about it, so none of those previous mentioned guys were out of the Big Ten. So just as best freshman in the Big Ten, a DDS high riser from Penn State, maybe he'll get on the field. Defensive end, again, that's a tough position to go out there and make some plays. Look at Georgia, 5-star, 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 Georgia. The Buckeyes, they've got an athlete. Who knows where the athlete of Pinkerton, Ohio, I would think that this is the player that Will Johnson is going to have to contend with, Alex Stiles out of OSU. But look at Georgia. Georgia's everywhere in these rankings. There's another one from Ohio State, CJ Nix. So there's the prediction on Will Johnson. And prediction number 11, Johnson, freshman All-American. He might be the freshman of the year in college football. Prediction 12, Michigan will start the season 11-0. And I have come around on that prediction early in the season. I thought it sounded very reasonable to say that Michigan would go 10-2, losing their last game and then losing that first road game at Iowa. That's still a pretty good year. That's over the total in Vegas. And, that's not getting, ahead of yourself or anything else. Very reasonable prediction at 10-2, I thought. But, I kept looking at Iowa in the offseason. I think Michigan can beat Iowa on the road, even if it's at night. I think Michigan's offense is just such a mismatch. And I know the offense doesn't play against the offense. But Iowa has no offense. And Michigan has a juggernaut on offense. And Iowa did a really good job last year of turning the ball over, of getting all the interceptions. They lose 3 out of their 4 in the secondary. And are they really going to lead the nation again in interceptions, the thing that was so helpful for them last year? I don't think so. I think that game in the offseason here on paper is a game that Michigan, they're going to be favored and they should win. And I think Michigan is going to win that game. And I think they're going to roll into Columbus. I also know that if Michigan goes 11-0, and I am sitting here staring into this camera, and Michigan is 11-0, and I'm going into the Thanksgiving weekend where Michigan's down at Ohio State on November the 25th, it's going to be hard not to pick Michigan to go down there and win, you know? So those are the predictions that I have. A 12-pack of predictions for 2022. This was the picture that I put up, if you're on YouTube, that you see that's supposed to attract people in. I put the prediction that Will Johnson will be the top freshman of the Big Ten. That doesn't sound like such a big-time prediction when you start walking through it. He might be the top freshman in the country. And hopefully that happens. I want to ask people a favor. There's 2 things. One, if you listen on the podcast, you know how people say subscribe, review, and rate? Apparently, I've been trying to get the Maize and Blue review, this particular show, to climb up in the rankings and to get on that front page of Michigan's podcasts. And I need more ratings and more reviews. And it's very easy to do. And if you watch it on YouTube, it's great to get the thumbs up, and it's great to get the subscriptions. But wherever you listen to your podcast, go in there and rate it. And heck, if you don't think it's a 5-star, I just said I love 5 stars, so I'm hoping for, but you can be realistic, whatever you think. You want to downgrade it, go ahead. But then write a review. The reviews apparently makes you climb the rankings. And I'm light on reviews. So I ask anybody out there to write a review, give a ranking, and then also subscribe. Speaking of subscribing, you should take advantage of this. I'm going to talk about this till I am blue in the face. And that is subscribing to the Maize and Blue Review, going to michigan.rivals.com and using the code UMFree22 at checkout. You know what happens when you do that? You get access to Maize and Blue Review, the posting boards, the threads, everything you want to know about recruiting up to the minute. This content free until the season opener. And we know that's just over a month away. So you get a good feel about what's happening with Maize and Blue Review. Okay, let's get to one last feedback, and it comes from Antoine, who says he is glad that people are disrespecting Michigan's chances in the media. They don't understand we got the media. They're lazy, and they don't do their homework. I like underdog Michigan. It keeps them hungry. I don't know what's happened in the last 24 hours, Antoine. Maybe you can follow up on this, but I said yesterday that I was talking with a friend of mine who's a Spartan, and he said the same thing that you did. He's like, wow, they're really disrespecting Michigan. And I didn't say who's disrespecting Michigan. Actually, I did say, well, what do you mean about disrespect? And he said, oh, everybody's picking Ohio State. Ohio State, I picked Ohio State. So, I mean, maybe, maybe you're talking about me being lazy. I look at Ohio State's offense, and I think that Ohio State should be the favorite to win the Big Ten. I think that everybody is picking Alabama and Ohio State to play in the championship game. And if you're not picking those two, I think the third most common pick would be Georgia. That's what I think. I think most people think like I do. Like, you're looking at who should be the favorites. Now, if you're looking for some kind of money move and you're looking to, bet something that gives you long odds and big returns, and you say, hey, look at Michigan's, plus 2,200. Oh, all right, I get that. But this gets down to, if we're just talking about Ohio State, I'm not going to sit here all day long and pull out any scarlet and gray pom-poms or anything, but I've looked at what's going on with Michigan. Now, look, I think Michigan, I have them as a top 5 team in the preseason. I think I picked them at number 5. I actually could have picked them 4. I'll have to go back and look, but I have them in the top 5. And I predict, and I don't think it's going to be that crazy, I would put a stack of $100 bills down to say that Michigan will be a top 10 team heading into the season. There's no disrespect there. That doesn't sound like anything and anywhere that is disrespect. Now, maybe if, you're online following a bunch of Buckeye and Spartan fans, well, that's what college football rivalries are for. You'll feel a little disrespect there, but not for real and not legitimate disrespect. And Michigan, remember, they're the champs. And you should still enjoy being the defending champ for, as long as you can. And hey, if Michigan, they've got, how many times are we going to say it? They've got a very good schedule. I think they're going to start 11-0. I don't think I would take the stack of $100 bills that I'm going to win from you by having Michigan in the top 10 in the preseason. And I will bet all of that money and push it, no matter what the odds are, that Michigan will go undefeated in September. They play 4 games in September. Michigan is going to be 4-0 and a top 5 team heading into Iowa City on October the 1st. This is the $1 million that I am putting down on that prediction. That doesn't sound anything like anybody else, and nobody, Michigan's going to have the hype train fully going at that point. Top 5, 4-0. Let's go. Now I hear you. Those Buckeyes come in every day. They're coming in. They're making some predictions. 84%. Okay. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, I'll talk with a former Wolverine, John Navarre. Knows a thing or two about quarterback competitions. When he came into Ann Arbor, camp opens, and we'll be a month away from the season. We'll talk to John Navarre tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and